The global economy has been very rife with uncertainty, and we have felt all the effects of inflation, rising rates, and geopolitical issues. Wouldn't it be nice if we had a better understanding of the current situation and how to safely navigate through it? Welcome to The Eighth Wonder, a channel dedicated to making compound interest your best interest. It is said that hindsight is 2020. By looking into the past, we can learn very valuable lessons that can help us in the future. Ray Dalio, who ran one of the most successful hedge funds by the name Bridgewater Associates, came out with an essay in 2007 titled How the Economic Machine Works, a template for understanding what is happening now. This essay predicted what was to happen in 2008 when the global economy experienced one of the biggest crashes known to man. This essay was turned into a video in September of 2013, and as I watched it recently, I felt that it shed light on exactly what is happening in the economy today. He talked about the cause and effect of the economic cycles that have proven true time after time. An understanding of the principles taught came from looking at times past and observing patterns. This is what made him one of the best investors around and made his hedge fund one of the very best, being able to stay profitable even in tough times, including 2008. This was the inspiration for this video, and his video will be linked in the description. So to begin, we need to understand that the economy is driven by three main things: productivity growth, the short-term debt cycle, and the long-term debt cycle. The main building block of the economy is transactions, the exchange of goods and services or financial assets for money or credit that happen each and every day. You will notice that there is a distinction between money and credit. This is due to the fact that credit is not actual money, but is backed up by the promise of money sometime in the future. Transactions, no matter how big or small, have one thing in common. They constitute an exchange of valuables, goods and services, for a store of value, money or credit. All the transactions that occur collectively make up the economy and help us understand spending. All the cycles observed in the economy are a direct result of transactions. The central government and the central bank are the biggest contributors to the economy. The central government collects taxes and spends money, while the central bank controls money flow and credit. Through credit, we can borrow money and finance things which we cannot outright afford, like a house or a car, which we can repay over a certain amount of time with a certain amount of interest attached to it. Lenders make money through interest, while borrowers get the things they need now without having to pay the full price at once. The higher the interest rates are, the more money the lender makes because the borrower will have to pay back more money. When interest rates are low, more people are incentivized to take up credit because repayments are cheap, and when the rates are high, less people take up credits, as this would mean bigger repayments. When it comes to credit, the more you earn, the more willing lenders will be to lend you money, and the more money you pay back on time and in full, the more creditworthy you become. Lenders will especially like you if you have assets that can be used as collateral in the case that you default on your payments. Their goal is to make back their money that they borrowed you plus a little more, and the more backup you have, the safer you are to them. The more credit people take up, the more spending they can do, and this continues to happen, thus driving up economic growth. Productivity growth is a byproduct of economic growth. As people make more money, they tend to spend more of it and tend to take up more credit too. More money and credit means that businesses can grow, salaries can rise, and people can improve their living conditions. As long as productivity is growing alongside economic growth, people will continue to take up credit in order to afford goods and services. Over time, the borrowers who are consuming more than what they make get to a point where they owe more than what they can afford because as the economy grows, productivity growth gets left behind. This causes an imbalance in the economy as the borrower's ability to repay decreases, which in turn decreases spending. Ray Dalio explains it quite well when he says that when we take up credit, we are essentially borrowing from our future selves, as we'll have to make repayments in the future, which will affect how much we can spend then. This means that the more credit you take up now, the more you have to pay back later, and if your credit exceeds your income or production, then you're more than likely to default on your repayments. So what happens when these defaults happen at a large scale? This is where we start to see the short-term debt cycle come to play. As spending and borrowing continue to rise, they get to the point where they are higher than production, which would then cause inflation, a rise in prices. Inflation causes prices to rise, and as long as people are able to pay back credit, they will continue to take up more of it, but eventually, it will reach a level where it becomes very high, and the central bank has to step in and save the day. To try and keep inflation in control, the central bank will raise interest rates, which in turn will cause repayments to become expensive and less appealing to borrowers. Spending will decrease and prices will decrease too, causing deflation, the opposite of inflation. This can lead to a decrease in economic activity, which eventually leads to a recession, a significant, widespread, and prolonged downturn in economic activity. If the recession gets severe and inflation is no longer a problem, the central bank will lower interest rates in an effort to stimulate the economy. The central bank will eventually start to raise interest rates and look to have them at a rate that sustains growth but is also stable, usually around 3%. This effort is meant to balance the economic seesaw, if you will. The central bank plays a big role in this cycle, and as much as it is called a short-term debt cycle, it can take 5 to 8 years. At the end of each of these cycles, the economy tends to be higher than the last cycle. People spend instead of paying off debts, and it seems like all is well. But eventually, in the long term, it catches up with them. Everything keeps going up for decades. Income, the stock market, and asset values. But all of these have been bought on credit, and eventually, debt repayments are needed and people don't have the money to pay them. This causes a huge crash like the one that took place in 2008. Individuals and banks alike feel the pressure. Incomes fall, the stock market crashes, and asset values decline. At this point, the lowering of interest rate doesn't help. This phase is known as deleveraging, since credit has been over-leveraged. Lenders cannot make back their money even with collateral because of the fall in asset values. The central government can't collect much taxes in such a situation due to high unemployment caused by the crash. The long-term debt cycle can take anywhere from 75 to 100 years. During this period, people might be forced to sell assets that they bought using credit as they cannot repay, and as more and more people do the same, the value of those assets decreases, which means that selling isn't profitable anymore. The big difference between a recession and a deleveraging is that in a deleveraging, the lowering of interest rates does not help the situation. Credit is just too high in comparison to production. In order to make it out of this situation, individuals, businesses, and governments will have to cut down on spending, debts need to be reduced or restructured, wealth needs to be redistributed, and central banks will have to print more money in order to stimulate the economy. How these measures are applied will determine how well the economy will recover. Eventually, conditions will improve and things will get better, but due to the fact that the economy is driven by transactions, and transactions are what humans do in order to survive, this will become a cycle which, when we look back into history, has always taken place and will continue to do so. What can we do to keep afloat through all of these conditions? Here's what Ray Dalio had to say.
So, in summary, there are 3 rules of thumb that I'd like you to take away from this. First, don't have debt rise faster than income, because your debt burdens will eventually crush you. Second, don't have income rise faster than productivity, because you'll eventually become uncompetitive. And third, do all that you can to raise your productivity, because in the long run, that's what matters most. This is simple advice for you, and it's simple advice for policymakers.
And there you have it. Having learned how the market works, you can now apply the advice given so you can make it to the other side alive. These are the very things that made Ray Dalio a successful investor, so you now have the blueprint, and it's up to you to decide what to do. If you'd like to watch the video by Ray Dalio, it is linked in the description of this video. I truly hope that this has been as informative to you as it has been to me. Do share your thoughts in the comments below and let me know how you feel about the economic cycles and how they work. If you have found value in this video, then show some love by clicking on the like button and sharing the video with a friend. Subscribe for more videos like this and click on the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you on the next one, but until then, stay invested.